We will now learn how to create key figures. We are in the planning area and we are in key figures. What we see over the different types of key figures are there is this icon. Some of the key figures of this are in this icon. Some of these key figures are a combination of these two icons. There is another icon against this particular key figure. So why we will see what are the options that a key figure has. So we have a key figure, a helper key figure, a alert key figure. So the key figures that we write mostly are the normal key figures. Helper key figures are those which actually are not required to be seen in the report in the Excel interface, but they are something which are useful to run an intermediate calculation. Alert key figures are some key figures which are used to raise an alert if there is a discrepancy or deviation from for a particular value from a threshold as defined. So for example, that we define that the forecast accuracy, if it drops below a certain percentage, then we raise an alert. We will see attribute as a key figure at a later point of time. We'll see this key figure. So what we see is that a key figure has different configuration items inside it. A part of this key figure is that whether it is editable, whether there is enable fixing, or there is um, calculations, and then what versions it belongs to, and then how do I want to show the values within this key figure. So what we see within these key figures is that there is no change history detection. Like if we have changed the key figures, whatever the changes has happened within the key figures, there is no enablement of change history capturing. So suppose there is a consensus demand key figure and somebody has changed the value of the consensus demand, they would be given an option to um, capture what was the reason because of which they are overriding the consensus demand. Now, there are several reasons, and those reasons are available in the reason code app, which we can look at later. This will help us to gather all the changes that were done by the planners for a particular reason. But within that key figure, if there is no enable change history option, then there won't be any option for the planners to even, update that why did they change the value in that particular key figure. So why are we not able to see any option to, have the enable change history option configuration? So we go to planning area. This is happening is why it is happening is because in the general tab of the planning area, we have enable change history, which is toggled off. So we will click on enable and then we will click on the enable change history based key figure calculations. Now, if you see that once we have made this change, and we go to key figure and then we should be able to see an option which is enable change history. So now you see this option was earlier not available. Now actually we have this option to be enabled so that planners can put their comments on why or the reason codes as to why they have modified the value. This is a very important aspect. There is another aspect of there is another configuration rather, which is enable fixing. So what it uses is that suppose that a planner actually works with few products. However, another planner overrides the consensus demand. If I can take the same example, the consensus demand key figure at a product category level. So what happens is that once that override is happened to this key figure, that will override all the value to all the products within that product category. But I, as a planner who actually owns a few products in my portfolio, don't want to get those files, those figures within the consensus demand updated. So what I can do is I can enable fixing to this key figure. So that means we will look at later how to do this in the Excel interface. But if I say that these products, I don't want the key figures to be overridden, I right click on the cell and I say enable fixing. That means that those products value will not be overwritten by the override on the consensus demand at a category level. So now we will create a key figure. We'll click on new. And in the key figure settings, we see that Um, there are two types of settings. One is stored and one is calculated. So in these examples of creating key figures, we will see one example of a key figure which is stored. We'll see another example of a key figure which is calculated. And then the third example, we will see where the key figure is both stored and calculated. Now, the question is, what is a stored key figure and what is a calculated key figure, and what is the use case of having a key figure where it is both stored and calculated? So suppose there is one key figure where we just want to have the data into it. We don't want to do any calculations with the data. For example, if we are copying the demand value from one key figure to another key figure. So a lot of time what happens is that we don't want to update the consensus demand for a particular set of products. So whatever the stat history is generated, we just copy that stat history into the consensus key figure without any changes. So in that particular situation, use case is that we have the key figure defined as a stored key figure. A lot of situation can arise on the contrary, where we want that key figure to not store any value, but just to calculate. So suppose we are calculating the forecast accuracy. So what we do is we define the key figure as a difference between the actual sales history and the predicted consensus demand. So we don't need to store any value, but rather we want to, calculate the forecast accuracy. So this is a typical use case of having a key figure defined as a calculated key figure. The third use case of defining a key figure as both stored and calculated is, again, I will take the example of a consensus demand key figure, where I would say that if I want to change the key figure to make some changes, to say that I want to override the key figure, then I want to have to provide the planner an option to override the consensus demand. If the planner updates the consensus demand, then I will take the updated value. Else, I will take the stat forecast value. So that means if the planner is overriding, then I will use it as a calculated key figure. But if the planner is not overriding, then I will use the stat forecast as it is. So I will use that as a stored key figure. So first we will see the example of a stored key figure. So we'll say that this is biz global um, key figure, or maybe 1, 2, 3. We will create three key figures. We say business global key figure, and again one, because this is the name which this key figure will be shown in the Excel interface. The base planning level. So we will choose the month product base planning level which we have created. We will have several options as whether it is editable or not editable. So if you don't want this key figure to be editable, you make it as without it, the editing is not allowed. However, there are other options like editable in the current or the future period. They're editable in the past, all editable, and system editable. So what it means is that I am allowing the key figure to be editable from now to the future. The use case may be, like for a consensus demand, I want this month's and the future periods generated consensus demand to be editable so that the demand planners can update it anytime. So then I will make it editable in the current or the future period. Editable in the past, any key figure that I want to make it adjustable in the past, I want it to be editable in the past key figure. All editable means anybody can use, anybody can edit any time period, either if future or the past. And then system editable means that nobody will be able to manually update the key figure value, but the system, like any job that runs from the copy through the copy operators, it will be able to update the key figure values. So now if we make it as an editable, then we get some other options also. We get the option of disaggregation mode. And we get that it is to be distributed in the proportion. What proportion? If we don't provide any proportion, so then what will happen is it will equally distribute because it is saying that it is equal distribution. But if you specify any proportions, so what will happen is there are certain other options available. That is same key figure as stored values, other key figure stored values, other key figure calculated values, and disaggregation expression.